Now, we are coming closely to the end of the Big-Data.AI Summit 2021, but we still have two presentations and two keynotes. The first presentation is from Professor Stefan Wrobel, who is a professor of computer science at the University of Bonn, and who also chairs the Fraunhofer Big Data and Artificial Intelligence Alliance. Professor Wrobel is not only a first-class, world-leading AI researcher, but he's also very present in the public debate on AI. He's an active player when it comes to AI policy, and he gives a lot of presentations, talks with a lot of people, and he has gathered a lot of experience over the course of several decades. Professor Wrobel, it's really an honor to have you here, and I'm looking very much forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Nabil, for these kind words. I'm glad that you welcoming me so friendly in such a friendly manner, but I'm even more happy that you guys are there listening to this talk. It's been a long day, it's been a great day, it's been an exciting program. You've been listening to lots of details from applications, had lots of advice, you've been discussing Gaia, but it's time now to step back a little, and that's what I would like to do with you here today, because we need to think about what it really is that makes AI applications successful among all the things that we could have learned here today. And that's what I want to do with you today. So let me share my slides with you so we can jump into that here together. Give me just a second to bring this online. Here we go. And now you should see me in a little small image, and you should see my slides in the background here. Here we go, okay? So our topic is being successful with AI, making your AI projects work. And what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to be sharing 5 lessons learned, 5 things that you want to be remembering when you try to implement, realize, and deploy your AI projects to make them successful. And what I'm having to tell you is based on the experience from literally dozens and dozens of projects that we in the Fraunhofer AI Alliance have been doing with our partners and for our customers. We don't have so much time, so let's jump right into these 5 insights that I think are key to making your AI projects work. So here's the first one, okay? What you see here is, of course, the crystal ball. You see the crystal ball that is basically showing you the future. What this stands for is that when you do AI projects, you start in, you think about where to actually use AI. There's usually lots of people who are telling you, lots of experts, what you should be doing. What are the famous applications, the famous use case in a sector? Or maybe you have even people in your company who already know what to do. So what it basically means is that it often seems obvious what you should be doing with AI and where the real benefit of AI would be. Well, it ain't so. So the first lesson I have for you is do not fall for the seemingly obvious. What we have learned from a large number of projects is that it's not usually the thing you think of first that gives you the most benefit in AI. Maybe the thing you think of first is the obvious, is the sexiest, is the thing that has had most press coverage. But your real benefit actually is when you focus on the AI applications that are as simple as possible and that deliver the most business value that you can actually have. So how do we do that? How do we find these things out? How can you go about this? Let me give you an example, what we've been doing with one of our customers. What we do regularly is something that is called shadowing. Shadowing actually is a process where our experts go into a company, usually for a period from 1 or 2 to 4 weeks, and they just look over the shoulder of what people are doing there. And the upshot of what I'm telling you is that when we do that, it's a very cost-effective measure to identify use cases that you may not have thought of before. And often these use cases are a lot simpler than what you would have done, and they deliver a lot more value. The example here is from a large hospital chain that we've been working with. Actually, 38 use cases were identified here, and you see there's 2 that came out of the process: optimization of resource planning and intelligent text mining. And let me tell you, those weren't the ones that were high on the agenda before this process ran, and they ultimately were very successful and delivered a lot of business value to that customer. So that was lesson 1. Do not fall for the obvious. Let's move on to lesson 2 here, okay? Number two, and what I'm going to tell you is symbolized by these cogs that you see here behind me. And the lesson here is that, okay, many believe that AI is the universe. Okay, when you listen, even at a congress like here, it's AI, AI, AI. And it sort of makes you think that when you've done AI, your company will consist of AI only. But you and I, we know, and we've seen that in many projects, that this is a fallacy that sometimes happens. We do AI, but we think about the rest of our companies second. Okay? What that means is that you're running into the second big driver, or let's say roadblock, of business success, which is complexity. Okay? Something that is more complex than necessary, or that is too complex, will not deliver the business value that you need. So the upshot of the second lesson basically is, okay, do not treat technical and human integration into your company as an afterthought, because that will result in a solution that makes your company too complex. So what that means is that before you do AI, if you're not sure your entire company and the surroundings of what you're doing there is set up in the right way, it may actually be a good idea to think about complexity first, or think about the systems that your AI application is going to work with, ERP systems, manufacturing execution systems, whatever they may be. If your AI system adds more complexity to these interfaces than it delivers value, it's actually not a good solution. So if you want to avoid that pitfall, here are some examples of what you could be doing with us or with partners. What we usually advise people to do when we see that IT systems are not properly aligned before we do AI, we do something with them that we call a 360-degree IT check. Again, just like shadowing, this is something that you can do reasonably quickly. It doesn't have to take years. It often takes weeks or only months, okay? So here we worked for a steel company, large steel company, and as the basis for data science, we looked at where the data come from. What was the status, the productivity, and we then took a 360-degree view of their IT infrastructure before actually doing AI. And of course, what that means is that the company is less complex and the surroundings of AI is less complex, so AI actually works better. Interestingly, there is a second dimension to this complexity issue that you want to be looking at. And this is the fact that, of course, your people are just as important, not only a resource, but as a factor in the success of AI. So usually what we do in practice is we also work on programs that work on the correct reskilling and upskilling for the employees and the people who are going to work with AI systems, so it doesn't add to the complexity when the AI is running. This chart is awfully complex behind me here, so I'm not going to be explaining all these little blobs here. Okay, these are examples and courses that we have in our portfolio, and we customize that to each and every company. But you can actually go further than that if you want to prepare well for AI. And the topic here is co-innovation, okay? If you think your AI project is going to be central to the company for a longer time, it pays off and makes sense to partner with an organization that focuses on innovation. Here's an example that we've been doing with Deutsche Telekom. And as you see here is the advantage that our customers saw here is uncomplicated access to new methods and always new impulses. And what that means is what is being developed at the end fits your people and fits the company and is the right way to prevent complexity before you actually deploy the AI solution. So that's the second subject we have here, the second lesson. Do not treat integration and complexity as an afterthought when you do AI. But I promised 5 of them. So let's move to the third one, the third lesson learned, okay, in the total of 5 that we have. The third lesson, and you will see a beautiful image here behind me. There's a brain, there is lots of data there. And this is supposed to highlight something that probably you should know already when you've been listening to the Gaia X session. Do not underestimate the power of data and knowledge. What do I mean by this? We all know that AI today is built by having data and then training ML systems. But that's not what I mean. I mean something even more basic than that. AI systems are great at predicting the future. They can predict the unknown. But of course, if you already know the unknown because you have the right data, you don't even need AI and things get a lot simpler. So the lesson is, Don't underestimate the benefit that you can have by looking at the data landscape in your company, or perhaps even in your ecosystem. And Gaia-X has been talking about that. If you can have the right data, often enough, simple integration of data will deliver the service with little complexity in AI. And even though I'm an AI person, that is my advice. Think about that first. Second dimension, even more importantly, if you want to build models with AI, but you already know the solutions, your people, your employees know solutions, then try to get that knowledge into the systems that you're building. What we're doing at Fraunhofer is we've developed something that we call hybrid AI. So we usually offer to our customers systems that integrate the power of data-driven machine learning with the integration of knowledge into their systems. And of course, let's look at an example here as well, how that works and what the benefit actually is. This is what we did for a home appliance manufacturer. It's a famous German home appliance manufacturer that you all know. And the problem there was correct fault diagnosis by service technicians. And of course, we could have built an automated AI system that tries to predict the exact source of the fault. But actually, the solution here in this case was simply an integrated access to all service relevant information. And we used, of course, data space and Gaia-X technology for the semantic integration here. So this was something that could quickly be achieved and delivered value to the customer really quickly at this point. Same thing goes for the use of knowledge. Here's an example from a customer, a consumer goods company who need to do a lot of experimentations to have the right property for their products, okay? Usually they do large numbers of trials, and we actually tried pure machine learning, data-driven machine learning to build an AI model here. Well, it turns out we were on the wrong path. We found out that the experts who had been designing these products for decades knew so much that we could put in a large part of the solution in part of a hybrid system. So we integrated expert knowledge in the process, and it turns out we had a better solution in less time with less cost, and thus delivered a lot of business value that we could not have had if we had done it from data alone. So the third thing to be remembering here is do not underestimate the power of data and knowledge. What is the fourth point to be remembering when you move out of this talk? Well, there is an important message to be had, and I hope the image that you're seeing is not the way you're feeling right now at the end of this day. The point here is what to do with an AI system once you've got the solution. Okay? Can you actually deploy in AI systems? And many companies do that and think the AI system is different from any other digital or information technology system. Well, it is not. All the things that you have to do there for operations are just as important. But at the same time, there are specifics for AI that you want to be looking at. And these specifics of AI mean that certainly you cannot think you can deploy and forget an active AI system. Why is that so? Well, we know that AI systems learn from data, and you've done that successfully. Think that the AI system has learned from 2020 data, last year's data. You didn't have anything more recent. Well, is that going to be still relevant in 2025? Well, probably not. In 2025, you're going to have to be changing these data. What if those data didn't have the right kind of quality? What if your system learns from interaction with the environment, with customers? Can you monitor that this system is the right answer? Well, you actually have to. And this is why the word to be remembering here from our fourth lesson is, of course, what today is called MLOps, or what is called AI operations. Okay? You see here that for ML operations, and when we go into these projects, we follow a strict process with our customers that you see here on the right behind me. I'm not going to go into those details here, but the important upshot is you must treat ML and AI systems operations as a subject in itself. And you must think about these deployment and these processes before you actually deploy the system, because again, it can involve training. So never think you can deploy an AI system, go on the bench and sleep. You have to do these ML ops things, and we've seen in a number of projects in the past year, even under Corona conditions, that these things can be successfully implemented. They are not overly expensive, they take some effort, but they make sure that your AI system continues to deliver consistent value and business return here. So what is our fifth story? What is the fifth method that we have here to sum things up? You see an image here behind me, and this is, of course, a digital measurement device, and there is a nice number here, 10.03. And probably most of you know what I'm going to be saying now, because many know, but perhaps some of you don't. Well, AI is not just a number, and AI quality is not just a number. So actually never think when you do AI that quality is just a number. Why do some people actually think that this is so? Well, because most self-respecting AI suites that you can download or use on the web as a cloud service, they will spit out a number, okay? Let's say it's accuracy, 99% model accuracy. And that, of course, sounds amazing, or maybe it's even 99.9%. But actually, as you probably guessed by now, that number doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't tell you how reliable all of this is. And it also doesn't tell you all the secondary factors like the inner quality, the acceptance by customers, the ethical requirement that your systems may have. So the fifth lesson is AI is never just a number. So what do you need to do? Well, you certainly need to go, and that's something we do regularly with our customers. You need to invest a bit, not only in the solution, but in the uncertainty management of your AI systems. This is an example, as you see here, the screenshots from Volkswagen VW from autonomous driving, where, of course, it's crucially important that we classify all objects that we see correctly, okay? And that the residual uncertainty is perfectly managed. What it means, basically, is you want to be sure that it just doesn't look good at the outset, but that there will be consistent business value and there will be no issue, okay? So you need to employ specific techniques that we've developed over the past years to estimate this uncertainty and to manage that uncertainty in the right possible way. But probably if you have a big application like autonomous driving and not just something small in your office organizations, you want to go even further than that. And we have a few customers who are already investing in that right now. And that is a fundamental process to understand, measure, and ensure your AI quality. We've had the EU recommendations today for what AI systems we should use and what we shouldn't use. I've been part of the AI expert group sometimes as a senior expert who's been developing these guidelines. And we're far along in Germany now to understand what good AI is, what reliable AI is, and what properties we should have here. You see here the methodology that we're using to evaluate AI systems in this particular sense, from reliability, fairness, autonomy, and control, all the way to data protection and data sovereignty. And we're discussing and finalizing, now you can download the white papers, even the preparations for certifications of AI systems if you really, really want to be on the safe side with your AI. So the upshot of this, of all of this, is there is 5 simple lessons in all of the things that you've heard today, all the great AI applications that I want you to remember. The first one is, do not fall for the seemingly obvious. The second one is, don't treat technical and human integration as an afterthought. The third one is, don't underestimate the power of data and knowledge. And the fourth one is, don't think it's deploy and forget. And finally, to make sure you have consistent business value across the board, do never think quality of AI systems is just a number. So that about wraps up my talk. If you're interested in learning more about some of this, you can just get in touch with me. You can get in touch with our headquarters of the Fraunhofer Big Data and Artificial Intelligence Alliance, because of course, if you think you've got things where you could benefit from some of the solutions that I've presented, we're here to help you out with this, just as all the other great people who've been presenting here today. Thanks for listening.